Well, call me crazy, because everyone else does, but I've gone and bought myself a new car. Well, not exactly a new car, in fact, it's the oldest car in the fleet now. It's 50 years old, and it's a 1974 BMW 520. And the reason it's parked here is that when I picked it up the other day after buying it, the starter motor didn't work, and so we managed to get it going, and then I had to stop for fuel along the way, and then it wouldn't restart, so I got someone to give me a push. Then when I brought it home, I thought I'd put it here and then reverse back up on the slope so I could roll start it, but it stalled, and so here it sat for the last couple of days. So let's see if we can find out what the problem is with the starter. So a BMW bonnet, on these particular models anyway, doesn't open like ordinary cars do, or other cars do. First of all, the bonnet releases in the glove box on the left hand side, because it was a left hand drive vehicle originally. And once you release it, you have to pull this forward and then pop it up. Now the starter motor is under there. I'm not sure you can see it very well, but that's it there, protruding into the bell housing where it contacts the ring gear. And that's the back of it there. I think in order to get to it, to remove it, we really need to take off these carburetors. Now these are not original, these are twin Webers that have been fitted. It originally would have had probably twin Strombergs. But let's see if it actually works, and we might be able to do this in here. At the relay. I'm just going to find out which relay it is. So I'll be the first to admit that I don't know a heap about vehicle electrics, but I do know a little. And one thing I know is that I've had a look through this fuse box, and I just simply cannot find a relay that's marked starter motor. And that doesn't mean that one of them doesn't function as that, but it could be named something else, because the four that are there seem to be called high beam, low beam, and fan or something else, you know. But nevertheless, what we have determined is that the battery's good, that the power is getting to the solenoid, but I just don't know whether the solenoid itself is working. And I'm going to have a bit of a fiddle around, but one thing that's important when you're working with electrics and around an engine is take off any metal watch bands, because the last thing you want to do is for to short it out, and you'll burn your hand pretty badly. So let's take that off for a start. Then we'll have a poke around. There's three connections to the solenoid. You know, one is the power that's coming direct from the battery to it, so it's always live. And then there's the second one that comes from another terminal to the motor itself. Then there's a third finer wire, and that is what triggers the solenoid. So I've disconnected that finer wire, And I figured if we put power to it, that should trigger the starter motor, or alternatively cause an explosion. But no, let's have a shot. We've hooked a wire to the terminal on the solenoid, and if we touch this, the starter motor should operate. Let's try it. There we go. So if we turn her on, let's see if we can start it manually operating the starter in that way. Success. Now what I have noticed is that there's no fan belt. Now there was a fan belt when I started out, and that's clearly come adrift, which means that the fan's not spinning, nor is the water pump working, nor is the alternator doing anything. So let's reverse this up to the shed and see if we can go about finding ourselves a fan belt so we can replace that. So there it is, and what we're going to do now is try and find ourselves a fan belt, and at the same time I think what we will do is pull off that starter motor and see if we can find out whether there's power getting through to that cable, because we can then maybe trace it from there. I popped out and picked up a belt that was probably as difficult as I expected it to be, you know, in that there's probably a whole variety of things that are going on with these cars, you know, such as whether they've got power steering or air conditioning, etc, etc. And this one doesn't, but I've got, which I believe is the right one, this one here. And I've learned a bit about belts today, and that is that 11 is the width of the belt, or depth of the V, I'm not certain which, and that 0825 is its length. So it's 82.5 centimeters. So let's see if it fits. Looks as if I've got the wrong length. So this is an 11A 0825, and I think what I need is the next size up, which is 0870, I think, so another 50 millimeters long, because it's not quite fitting. That'll be a job for tomorrow. So yesterday we tried to fit a belt, only to find that we'd got the wrong size belt. Now that's actually my fault entirely, because when I'd gone to the parts store to pick one up, I had knotted a piece of string which I thought was in fact the right length, but it turns out that my knot was probably in the wrong place. Anyway, we managed to swap it, and this here I'm hoping is the right one. So let's give this one a shot. And that, my friends, is a perfect fit. Now we do need to adjust this. Pulling this out and tightening it, but she's otherwise perfect, so. So we just jammed it from underneath to prop it up while we do this up. So let's see if we can actually get to that though. So that's pretty tight. We might try and start her up and just see what it looks like spinning, to see if it's spinning true. But also to check that everything's working as it should. So what we're going to do is check the voltage, or check if there in fact is a voltage at the ignition cable that goes to the starter. And the way we do that is to put that in there, hold this to a good earth, which might be any of these bolts here. Okay, turn it as if to start. Off. Now turn it all the way off and then do it again. Off. Now, surprisingly, we're actually getting a voltage there, so I don't know where the issue lies. If we're getting a voltage down that cable and yet it won't start, and if I can short it to start it. So what we're going to do is see if it actually will turn over by plugging this back on. Because who knows with cars, sometimes the funniest things happen. Now turn it all the way off, is it off? And then now try to start it, but if it cranks, just stop. Miraculous. So somehow now what I've got in here is my reluctant assistant, and she's actually made it work. Despite every day attempt we had previously. It's a bit like, you know, when you call the computer tech and he says, well, what's the problem? So, well, what? Oh, it's working. Well, she's just made it crank. Turned all the way off. Now don't touch anything else, but do that again. Alright, turn it off. See, I don't think the alternator's working because there's no charge coming from it. Anyway, so what we've established is that there's something kind of intermittent going on then, so I think that the best thing we can do, and there is no charge coming from the alternator, so I might strip that off, see what the problem is with that. So this is it, and I think we'll keep this one fairly brief. I mentioned this the other day, this scratch that we can attend to. Otherwise it's pretty good, and while it's not perfect, it looks as if this has been kinked at some point, but it's not disturbing, so I'm not too bothered. Otherwise it's actually in pretty good shape. The chrome looks pretty good. Like all BMWs, it's got foggy headlamps, but I'm certain we can do something about that. Anyway, let's get this up, and there's an introduction to my latest acquisition. So thanks for watching, and I've got a couple of others in the pipeline, and so I apologise for the delay in getting these out, but stuff takes time. Talk again soon.